Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Caleb, also known as the Book Flipper. I am here with Randy. Randy, say hello.
How's it going? Hi, guys.
And we have been chatting for about 6 minutes, and we have talked maybe twice on Facebook prior. So this is my chance to get to know you, Randy. Thanks for coming on and bearing your soul with the world.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, this won't be too painful. Well, why don't you tell everybody? I know you're a brand new seller, so tell us where you're located and how long you've been selling, and a little bit about your past. And then we are going to dig into your numbers. I'm a numbers guy. You've actually invested in the tracking spreadsheet, and so this is going to be a live mentoring session in a little bit. But also, there's a lot of new people that come into this business at any given time, and we want to actually be frank. We always tell people, hey, this is not get rich quick, it's get rich slow. And so we actually want to dig into your numbers and show you some of the ups and downs. So if you are brand new and watching this, or you've been selling for a couple months like Randy, we want to show you maybe what to expect and kind of give you some hope and some pointers. So Randy, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. Appreciate that. So I live here in Utah, born and raised, married, 3 kids, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so I kind of fell into this. I was just telling Caleb before we went on here, this is my starting my 101st day. So basically the middle of October is when I got rolling on this. I kind of fell into it. Someone asked me the other day, how did I get into this book selling? And honestly, I don't know how. All I know is that I came into, there's some neighbors of mine who are legitimate hoarders. I think they tell you that as well, but their whole basement would rival any kind of library. And so I was kind of over there and saying hello to them, and they were showing it off and they were very happy about it. And anyways, I ended up purchasing about 600 books from them at a pretty good deal. So that's kind of how I got my start. And, as I've kind of gone through this, I realized, not having anything, it was just my arms to carry them out and just looking at them. That's how I got my inventory. So here I am, 101 days into this, and kind of to the point where it's like, I know enough to be dangerous. We could talk about some of the things that I've done to get to where I'm at, but it's been a really fun, exciting thing. If anything, I found a great hobby, but I'm turning it into, what I thought was going to be a hobby has come into a really, formative business. And I'm kind of at that pivot point where it's either time to scale or to, keep going at the rate I am. So anyways, I'm happy to be here and glad to be where I'm at.
That's great. So your neighbors had a pile of books and you were just chatting with them and they said, hey, we have books, we don't know what to do with them. And you stepped in, or how did that conversation go down?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I had talked to them a few times before, and there's other things. So really what was fascinating is their garage. They just have a ton of things. And, to most people it would just be junk, but I was just like, holy cow. But anyways, as far as the books go, I said, what are you going to do with them? Because they're mid to late 70s and they've got kids, but he goes, well, our kids don't express an interest in this. And I go, well, what are you going to do with them? He goes, well, I don't know. But they're all in a basement, so they can barely get around anyways. And so I said, well, why don't you let me help you unload those? I had no thoughts of at the time of selling them, but I came home with about 600 books and I was like, what am I going to do now?
So wait, you paid for these, or you just took them?
I paid for them at they were basically free. They were
okay.
Under 50 cents a book.
Okay. So that's actually pretty expensive for a blind bulk buy in some cases.
Well, and again, as I've learned, most of them are not worth anything.
Okay. So you pay $300 and your thought was, I'm just going to take these home and I'll figure it out.
Right. Exactly.
There's got to be some value here, right?
Yep.
I love it. All right. So you take these books home, and had you heard of like book flipping on Amazon? Like, did you know what you were going to do with these?
No clue. I brought them into my garage, and I didn't even know what to do with them. And what was funny is my kids were giving me crap because I put them all in an order that was like by the author's first name, the first letter of their first name. And my kids are like, you've never been in a library before?
Yeah, Dewey Decimal, Randy, come on.
Yeah, exactly. I know. So after I took some harassment from the kids, it was finally I kind of got an order. But what was interesting is I I really wasn't even on Facebook. You're looking at a guy who literally just kind of fell into this. And so I don't know what changed on one night, but I was probably just like, how am I going to sell these books? I obviously there's eBay, there's a local or a regional kind of a online selling where people go to buy and sell items. There's Facebook Marketplace, but honestly, I just started looking on YouTube and started bouncing into these videos and communities, and next thing I know, I've got an Amazon professional seller account. And like I said, my first sale was October 14th of 2020. So
that's amazing. So the business lesson here is if your neighbors have a pile of trash to get rid of or junk, you should pay them. So the only tip I'd give you there is next time, say that it's a junk hauling service, and say normally you would pay me to take the stuff, but I'll do it for free. I'm such a nice guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, so I love this. So one of the things I preach, and there's two really schools of entrepreneurs. You're in, I don't know if it's A or B, right? So let's just call it A. You're in group A. You're like, hey, let's just jump in with both feet. We'll figure it out later, right? I'll buy the books. I could probably make some money. Worst case, I'm out a couple $100, right? The other school, let's call them group B for lack of a better term, is I'm going to calculate everything. So they pull out a notepad and they're writing down notes, and they spend 6 months just analyzing the business. Is this a good opportunity? How do I sell the books? What happens with returns? How do I list them? How am I going to find it? And they do paralysis by analysis, or analysis by paralysis, whichever way it is, paralysis by analysis. And sometimes they just never get started. So I love that you jumped in. So we'll keep going down this story, and we'll bring up your numbers here in a minute. But one of the things I preach or teach, whichever way you want to call it, is I always tell people, start up, just get started. You'll figure it out later. So some of the numbers that we'll look at, they're not perfect, they're not beautiful, but you're getting started and you're getting those repetitions. So start up, scale up, and then step back. And this story keeps going around on TikTok and Instagram. It's an older story, but there's a professor. It's like a college class. You could do this with cooking. You could do it with art. You could do it with whatever. But there's two groups of students. And the one group of students, he says, all right, you guys have all semester. You've got to paint one painting, and it has to be a masterpiece. We're going to grade you at the end of the semester on how well it is. So half the class gets to just do one painting, and they can't screw it up. That's their one chance. The other half of the class, he says, you're going to do a painting a day or 5 paintings a day. I don't care. Your goal is to do 50 to 100 paintings throughout the semester. And most of them are going to be crap, and that's fine. Just tear them up at the end. And then, take your best one or your last one, and we'll grade that. And of course, you know where this is going. Which class, which group wins? Well, it's the group that just jumped in and was practicing every day, because they sucked when they started, but by the end, they had enough repetition that they were able to actually take the best of what they learned. And by far and away, they blew out the group that was just so focused on being perfect. So this business is not about being perfect. You're always going to make mistakes. I see people all the time go, well, I bought this book and, I have to get my money back out. Well, maybe it's kind of a coin flip. Sometimes you're going to win. Sometimes you're going to lose. The trick is you have to have your winners outweigh your losers, and then, make way more money on your winners. We all have the success stories of spending a quarter and turning it into $100. But if you spent the quarter and didn't get anything, no big deal, right? You're out a quarter. So I love it. You're in group A, you've been jumping in, and that's cool. So
the other full disclosure with that story is that in that garage where there are some cool things, I found some items that I ended up, again, purchasing very cheap, not books. And I made, probably $500-600. And so I thought in my mind, I'm like, well, I've got these items and I already sold them. If I can use a little bit of this money to get rolling on this book business, I'll do that. But again, I wasn't even thinking like, hey, I've got a book business I'm going to go start. It was really just a haul off service, like you said,
right.
And paid a little bit of money and here I am. So
yeah, it's an accidental business, which I love. Yep. Before we dive into the numbers, what do you want this to be when you grow up? I say that tongue in cheek, but do you just want this to be on the side and make a few extra dollars? Do you see like, oh my gosh, there's potential? Where do you see this thing going in the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, I think 6 months to a year. I think for me, I want to scale up and to have it continue to be a side hustle for me. It's an opportunity to have my wife and kids, if they want to be involved, which some of them are, and but also, to have some time together. I wouldn't say together time as a family, but if, my youngest is a junior in high school, and, he has a job that, like every 16-year-old, he's like, man, I liked it when I didn't have to work. But, if I can help, if I can give him an opportunity to go out and make some money and go, help in that regard, learn a business, that's where I see it short term. Longer term, I'd like to scale it to where I can quit what I'm doing. So
perfect. Well, that's some good aspirations. And I was not your kid, but I was that junior. When I was 16, I went and got a job at a golf course. My sister told me, find a job where the perks are awesome. And I'm not old, but this is how old I am. When I started, minimum wage was $5.15 an hour. Mm-hmm. So I worked 20 hours a week. I made roughly $100. I got a few dollars in tips. I wasn't cute back then, so I didn't get a lot of tips, but I got free golf. So free golf was great.
Most important, yeah.
But I worked all summer, $100 a week. I probably worked, 10 to 12 weeks, whatever the summer was in Michigan. And so I made, let's call it $1,200. And so the next year I said, this is silly. I'm giving up my nights and weekends because that's prime golfing time for leagues and whatnot. I'm not going to the beach and hanging out with my friends. And I made $1,200, which was a lot of money to me at the time. But I knew someday $1,200 was not going to be a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. So my goal, my next year when I was 17, was I want to just flip things. I don't care. I'll do eBay. Amazon wasn't really as big back then. eBay was kind of the cool kid on the block. And so my goal was I want to work my hours and make that $1,200. And I did. So hopefully your kids catch a little bit of that entrepreneurial bug and go, hey, I can make that money and have spending cash to put gas in the car and buy some cool toys and save up for college and whatever else. But if they can do it on their schedule, that maybe it lights that fire for them.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. All right. So that's, I love it. I love that you just jumped in. So let's look at your numbers and let's see you're probably rolling at this point. You're probably almost ready for retirement. And
yeah.
So let's dig in.
For today at noon, but it may not happen.
All right. And you've got a hard cutoff in about 37 minutes, right?
Yep.
Cool. So we will kind of dive into these. This is not live at the moment. We're just recording. We'll post this live later. If you guys have questions, if you're new, comment below. I'll circle back around and I'll leave some, I'll answer questions as they come up. There won't be any live Q&A here, but I do want to dig in. So this is the tracking spreadsheet, and kudos to you, Randy. Most people don't purchase this or actually pay any attention to their numbers until, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, and then they're going, shoot, this is actually a business. I got to figure out taxes and is it working, and ask these questions. So kudos for you. I'm a big believer in numbers. They tell a story and they help you know, is this working and should I continue? So that's awesome. Did you set up real quick on your business structure? Do you have an LLC for this? Is this just running through you at this point?
Yeah. So I had an LLC already set up through a real estate business. And so this is just kind of a sister company to that. So I had the bones in place. I just needed to get a couple other things set in motion in order to do that.
Yep. And separate bank account, yep. Everything. And I love that most people don't even track their mileage with this sheet, and you've done that. So yep. That's phenomenal. So let's dive in. So if you guys aren't familiar, it's a tracking spreadsheet. It's a tool I sell. It's not a monthly type deal. It's just a one-time payment. You drop your listing data in. Looks like you were listing just through Seller Central. Is that right, Randy? Just with these SKU?
Yeah, and that's
showing up.
That's what's interesting is that I didn't pay anyone for a course or classes. I really didn't watch a ton of videos. I engaged in a couple of Facebook groups and yep. then watched some videos. But again, it was, out of that first 600, I was just kind of throwing things up and kind of was a cowboy out on the range. And so obviously I've learned a ton since. And as you can see, it was just through, I didn't have any listing software. I didn't have a scanner. There were obviously tools that were out there that I either didn't know at the time or was a little hesitant to jump in immediately. But gosh, and we'll talk about it. As soon as I did, that's when the business really started to take off.
Perfect. I mean, obviously we sell tools, including Scout IQ. I'm a angel investor in AccelerList. So there's some, I believe in software, but again, my workflow, my idea is to start up, scale up, and then step back. So starting up, it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. It won't be perfect. So just get started. I love that you jumped in, bought a pile of books, just said, heck, I'm going to figure it out. Then as you scale up, you got to start adding efficiency. So again, people want to be like, well, I want to have the most efficient, perfectly run business. Great. But if you're starting and you only have 100 books in inventory, it doesn't matter if you shave 10 seconds off listing each book and you're perfect with your workflows, because you only have 100 books that you're worried about. So it doesn't matter if it's slow and methodical and not pretty. When you start to get to the point where you're listing 10,000 books in a month, then saving 10 seconds a book really starts to matter. So as you scale, efficiency becomes really important, but it can be messy. It can be ugly when it gets started. So again,
Caleb, that's what I think about. Sorry to interrupt your thought there, is that there's things that as a new person, that if I can do very well and very consistent, all the other things are ancillary. I can learn about those things as I go along. So for example, I'm just learning about how under those ASINs, there's B numbers. I'm learning that there's something going on there. You obviously know that, but that's a learn as I go. And so, someone might be sitting here thinking, gosh, I get so caught up in learning about this, or focused on how much I'm going to make on one book, or what's the Keep a chart say, or, focus on the things. And this is what I do. Focus on those things that are going to bring the most growth, the most revenue, those things that are going to be the most helpful for your business, and then learn along the way, and you're going to be just fine.
100%. Yeah. Just get started. And again, if you could get that paralysis by analysis, and we'll look at your numbers, and early on, they weren't great. We'll see if they improve as we get into it. Yeah. But this is awesome, because people just say, hey, yeah, just find books and list them and turn them into money, which is kind of true.
Right.
But it's not quite that simple. But the reality is, like, Randy, you're 3 months in, I'm 6-7 years in. I've been selling for 10 years online, 12 years, but like 6 years full-time doing books, and then software came later, but I still make a full-time income off of books. I'm further down the continuum than you, right? I can still learn from you, you can learn from me, but it doesn't matter. If you and I both walk into a room and find a pile of books, we both now have the skills to magically turn them into money.
That's right.
Now, maybe I'm a little more advanced and I can list them faster. Maybe you're a little more creative with your pricing and can squeeze a few extra pennies out of them. It doesn't matter. That pile of books is roughly worth the same amount of money. So the skills you need to learn if you're just starting are, hey, like, you got to be resilient and know you're not going to necessarily make a lot of money in your first 3 to 6 months. Most businesses don't make any money in their first year or two. This business is different. You will start to squeeze some profit. So we'll keep digging into the numbers. But the important thing is to get started and be committed and say, look, I'm going to stick with this for 6 months. And Absolutely. Because you've got a lot of things working against you. You didn't have the buy box. You might still not have how many feedback do you have at this point, Randy?
2.
So you're probably not even getting the buy box yet.
No, I have not gotten the buy box yet. Nope.
So typically I think it's at 5 feedback. And feedback is not like on eBay. eBay is I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Right. Feedback is left on 5% of transactions, or at least it was when I was heavy at eBay. Amazon is like 0.5%, between 0.5% and 1%. So if you sell 100 books on Amazon, you might get 1 feedback. And you've sold what, 300 books? I think you told me.
Yep. Yeah.
And you're at 2 feedback. Yeah, that's about right. Now you will get, so when you sell merchant fulfilled and you're doing both, which is really cool. I think a lot of people, maybe we're guilty of pushing people toward FBA. FBA is super scalable. There's a lot of benefits, but there's some easier things about starting merchant fulfilled. Among them is the buy box doesn't really come into play for merchant fulfilled sellers. It's all about price. So even though you're just launched and Amazon has that little scarlet letter next to your name that says just launched,
right?
People can still kind of trust you because it's Amazon's platform. And if you're the lowest price, you're going to get more sales merchant fulfilled than you would if you were just launched FBA, because you cannot get the buy box until typically you get about 5 feedback. So just getting started, you got to be committed to get 300, 400, 500 books sold before you might even get the buy box. And once you do, your sales will really start to grow. So this game is exponential. You can start with 100 books and sell a small chunk. And over time that grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. But early on, it's a long runway. It's a little bit of a process. Okay. Yep. So tracking spreadsheet, we have your listing data, which you pull back in from Amazon. You actually took the time to go back through and put the source and the buy cost, which is great. We've got your sales data, which is just the sales reports from Amazon. We can see you've got some merchant fulfilled, FBA. We can see where they're shipping to, which is kind of fun. You got one just down the road from you. And then there's a couple other things. You've actually tracked your mileage, which is awesome. There's a couple apps that do this as well. Mile IQ is one. Mileage is awesome. You guys should be tracking mileage, even if you just throw in a spreadsheet. As long as you have some sort of a mechanism to track that, it's great. It's a non-cash deduction, meaning, you know, the rate in 2021, I think just went down to like 56 cents. So we can put that in. But what happens is you drove 95 miles round trip for sourcing. Maybe you hit a couple thrift stores right at the end of last year. You get to deduct on your taxes. You get to deduct $55 of profit and don't pay tax on that amount. But that 95 miles did not cost you 55 actual dollars. Now, the IRS is saying, yes, the historical average cost between gas and maintenance and oil changes and tires and whatever is roughly 57.5 cents a mile, but it doesn't come out of your pocket, which is really nice. So this helps you shield and not pay tax on that amount, even though it didn't cost you that amount.
Definitely.
But that's great that you have that. That's just a little side note. All right, let's look at your sales. So this is, you started mid-October.
Yep.
You had $370 in sales in October. So you're like, yes.
Right.
November, we tripled that almost. We got to $900. And then December, you did almost $1,500. And we'll get to your January numbers shortly. So all that said, this is through the end of the year was 2.5 months. You had $2,700 in sales, which sounds impressive. Your net profit, maybe not as impressive, but we'll dig into the numbers. You listed, let's look at your units. You listed 1,400 books, which is awesome, in 2.5 months, so 10 weeks, about 140 books a week, which is awesome. You sold 220 units, and that leaves you with about 1,200 as of December 31st in inventory. Your bank deposit, so after you sold this many dollars in books, $2,700, Amazon put $110 in your bank. Now, this is a little bit misstated because Amazon, a couple things. One, we talked about these troubles of getting started. Amazon doesn't let you get the buy box, so your sell-through rate is going to be low. Two, they hold a bunch of money in retainer because they say, hey, we don't know that you're just selling junk. We're going to leave reserve money and not pay you out all of that money.
Yeah.
So they probably owed you a higher chunk. Do you still have reserves? Have you looked at Seller Central?
I have. I've gotten one more payment since then, but I still have quite a bit of money in reserves. And I don't look at that a ton, but I'm just curious because I haven't found a pattern, but it'll be really high and then it'll be really low, and it ebbs and flows. But that's one of those things that I don't get caught up in.
Yep.
I just focus on the things I can control, which is sourcing and sending in books or listing them.
Yep. So as we look at some of these metrics, and if you guys are brand new, shameless plug, we've got a free training site. It's called the100bookchallenge.com. So THE100bookchallenge.com. You can go there and you can actually plug your own numbers in. I'll show you what that spreadsheet looks like in a minute, but you can plug your own numbers and get a feel of what's going on. So when I look at these numbers, these are cash flow numbers. We redid the tracking spreadsheet. We actually took all of this section out because, this is not, we'll get into accrual accounting. We'll look at your income statement in a second. This is cash flow. So you sold $2,700 top line. And guys, top line is irrelevant. I don't care if you sell $100,000. If you're selling $8 books, FBA, you're hardly squeezing any profit back out. So your sell-through rate matters. You got to be selling good books or listing good books. And your average selling price, or ASP, matters a lot. And Randy, this is low, but you were just starting out. You weren't even using a scanning app. You were just listing anything and everything. And, that's okay to some extent. But, when I look at this as a cherry picker, someone like you, although you bought a bulk load, right? So you're going to list anything you can make 50 cents on.
Right.
I would love to see the ASP go up.
Sorry, Kayla, I was going to say, and with that, comes that's the diving in part, so yep. I listed a bunch, probably a bunch that won't sell. And here we are. I think that you see that trickle through, and until I can either get them down or sell them another way and get really efficient at my inventory, this is where we're at.
Yeah. But no harm, no foul. Like for you, even listing merchant fulfilled it takes some time, but there's no cost. You put it on your shelf And if it sells, you then incur the shipping costs.
Right.
FBA is a little different. You don't want to flood FBA with junk because storage fees do start to kick in. They're very small, but if you send in 10,000 crappy books, that starts to really eat away at your profits. Also, you have to pay the inbound shipping, whether they sell or not. And so that can actually drag you into a hole as you get into it. So let's keep looking through some of these metrics. So units sold, 50 your first month, 75, and then 100. So you're ramping up nicely. Your average selling price, this is really good. So when you started, it was $7, $7.70. November was $12.50. December was $14, and I think we're already higher in January. So guys, because of the way that Amazon's fees work, I've got a lot of videos on it. They charge a flat rate if you're doing FBA, depending on the weight of the book, but it averages between $4 and $5. It's a little bit less on on light books. It's a little more on heavy books. Let's just call it $4.50. And then they take 15% of the sales price. They take an extra $1.80 on every book that you sell just because they can. And so what that means is if you're selling a lot of $10 books, FBA, you're probably only squeezing between $1.50 and $2.50 back out of it. So 15 to 25% is your net operating margin, or your net profit margin, or gross margin, whatever you want to call it, on the, all you finance nerds are probably going to call me out, but that's fine. You're only going to squeeze 15 to 25% of your actual sale price in terms of what Amazon will pay you. And then you have to deduct out all of your other business expenses. If you're selling $20 books, you're going to be getting closer to 10 or 11 or $12. You're going to be squeezing 50 to 55% back out. So if you can sell more expensive books, you should. Although I love that you just jumped in, Randy, and said, I don't care. I'm just going to sell books and we'll figure this out.
Sure.
So units listed, this is probably that first big purchase that you did. You got about 650 books listed your first 2 weeks, really, which is amazing. November slowed down a bit. December, you got back up to 500 books listed. And you can see your total inventory climbing. Your turn rate's going to be high your first month because we calculate you started with 0, and then we average how much inventory you had through the month. So this is usually double what it really was. And then you're selling 11 and 10%. That's not amazing. I'd like to see that number between 15 and 20% each month. But again, you listed a bunch of stuff that is probably long tail, high rank, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
So, again, if you had chosen not to list some of that stuff, you would have some slightly better metrics, but I'm not going to get hung up on those. All right. Your cash flow is actually negative, which is a little bit to be expected, partly because of the low average selling price, partly just because you bought a label printer in there, which I think cost you like $200. You've got some software, you've got all your mileage that is counting mileage wouldn't count against cash flow. You've got some buy costs and you have all the inbound shipping. So this is a cash flow standpoint. What do you think when you see these numbers, Randy?
Well, it can be disheartening. I mean, I'm picturing, me and others sitting here watching this going, I just want to sell books. Like why do I have to do all that? And I think I would just reiterate why this is so important, because I kind of came up with my own Excel spreadsheet just to track it until I found this sheet from you. And yeah, it's a one-time investment, but clearly you can see that it does everything probably and more that we need it to do. So while it's disheartening in terms of what I've made just now or what's actually been deposited in an account, I like the trajectory of it. And that's what I focus on. I'm not concerned right now with, hey, what am I making or not making? I just like the trajectory of the business. Am I doing the right behaviors?
I love it. So here's one more analogy, and then we'll look at 2021, then we'll look at your income statement and try and kind of show that trajectory. Yep, I think you're on the right path. Because again, I look at this and go, man, someone might see this and go, wow, 3 months in, I can expect to be losing money. Well, yeah, probably. Like, it depends. If you get the books for free, if you have a lot better books to get started, maybe. But Amazon's taking $40 a month for your professional seller account. You've got all these fees involved, especially on low price books. And yeah, if you're not careful, you can definitely be in a hole early on. But you're absolutely right. You're building a trajectory. So here's just a fun, real quick, another story. Take a piece of paper. I just got a sticky note, right? So it's really thin. The thickness of this is, I don't know, the 1/100th of an inch or something, right? All right, I fold this in half. So I'm doubling. So we're talking about exponential growth. So I go from one piece of paper, now I have 2 thicknesses of paper, right? So maybe I'm, 2/100ths of an inch. Now I go here, now I'm at 4/100ths of an inch. let's pretend you can only fold a piece of paper 7 times. It gets too thick and too cumbersome and whatever. Even if it's a huge piece of paper, 7 times is the maximum amount of times you can fold it. What if, let's just pretend I could fold this 50 times. So 1, 2 thicknesses, 4, 8, 16, 32. If I could fold this 50 times, Randy, how tall do you think it would get?
Oh, gosh, a foot, maybe.
A foot. What do you guys think? If you're watching this before we reveal the answer, post down below. How thick do you think a piece of paper folded 50 times? It's 2 to the 50th power, right? Or 2 to the 49th power. What would that equal? Most people guess a foot, 5 feet, 10 feet. The answer is from here to the sun. It's 93 million miles of thickness.
Oh, wow.
Okay, look it up if you don't believe me. But we don't our minds are incapable of understanding really big numbers. Like we throw up like, hey, our national debt's in the trillions. Well, okay, that's more than $1 billion, but it can't be that much more. No, it is. Right. So the idea, all I'm saying is the trajectory does matter. And what you do, the work you put in early to get the buy box, to get your feedback, to learn the skills definitely pays off. And you're going to get to the point, Randy, at some point here in the next couple of months, I'd love to have you back on in 3 or 6 months and see where you're at. You're going to get to the point where you're squeezing $1,000. You'll have your first profitable month in the business. And the next month, it wouldn't be surprising at all if you keep pouring gas on the fire that you squeeze 2 or 3 grand out of the business. And before you know it, you've got a legitimate business that might be generating 4 to 5 to 6 grand a month with, hopefully on the side for you still. And then maybe if you really ramp it up, maybe it does better.
Yeah. And I was going to say, you could line up 100 booksellers and there would be 100 different motivations as to why they're doing this and how they came about. And all of those are important, of course, but what would be very consistent are the tools and the things that each of us do in order to get to that point. So if you're sitting here thinking, gosh, do I have what it takes? Yes, you do. Can I do this? Yes. What's, the drive and commitment and all those intangibles, that's where we have to look inside. But those things that Caleb, me, everyone does on a day-to-day basis, those things are unchanging. And that's what I tend to focus on. So you can get lost in comment boards. You can get lost in, a mean seller or bad feedback or some of those things that are just out of our control. But focusing on, I can't stress the importance of focusing on those things that are going to drive and grow the business.
Yeah, I love it. And it's kind of the idea of getting 1% better every day is you can't control, like no matter what, even if you find the mother load of books, you're not going to be crazy profitable early on. It's going to take commitment. And roughly half the people out there that are newbies will quit within the first 3 to 6 months. And 3 to 6 months is kind of, you're right at 3 months. I'd love to have you back on in 6 or 9 months of your total selling journey and see where you're at. Because most people at 3 months are probably not that much different than you. They've listed some books. By the time they factor in their expenses, even if they're profitable, their dollars per hour is minuscule. And so the tendency is, well, this sucks. Everybody's lying to me. There's no money in books. And I think it's important to have these discussions. So let's look at 2021 because we are right now it's January 22. So this data is through January 21. We just pulled accurate data as of this morning. And so all of 2020, well, the last 2.5 months, you sold $2,700. 3 weeks into the brand new year, you're already at $1,700. Now, a couple things. One, it's that snowball. It's that stacking of the paper, so to speak. You're already starting to see some of that benefit. 2, January is a really good time for selling books. It's textbook season. People have New Year's resolutions and they go buy a bunch of books. So January is one of the better months in our business. So you're going to still see growth if you keep listing books, Randy. But February, March, April kind of are the doldrums for booksellers. So if you guys have been selling for a while, January is up here, February, March are down quite a bit. Of course, the summer varies, but people tend to buy books in the summer. You have a little bit of a textbook season in May as well. And then August, September are really good. December is really good. So there's about 5 or 6 really good months. January is up there. August is typically a little higher, but January is probably the second best month to be a bookseller. So if you guys are watching this, it's a great time for you to be getting that stacking philosophy. But so January, you haven't even listed a book, or we don't have your data from what you've listed, right? Have you listed any books in the last 3 weeks?
let's see, I've sent some in. I haven't done any merchant fulfilled. So there's, there's been a total of, I've sent 21 shipments in, and I think there's still some that need to be posted. So I don't believe that there has been any in
Okay.
January. Yeah.
So that's one way to also start squeezing money back out is don't send books in, because every time you ship a box of books, it costs you, what are you paying, about $10 to $15 a box?
Yeah. It's been anywhere from 8 to 15, depending on
where it goes.
Yep. Yeah. And I learned the hard way. My account got suspended. In full disclosure, I woke up like I couldn't list anything. And
oh no,
what happened was again, one of the learnings, but I was over the weight by a couple of pounds. It was like 52 pounds, and they, I sent in an odd size box, which was crazy. I didn't even know I had odd size boxes, but I got fined $25 each for both of those. So it cost me $50 to get my account back in. And again, it was a learning. It was a $50 learning experience,
Yep. Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. And again, for those of you that don't know, you can't send boxes to Amazon over 50 pounds. It's a safety issue for their employees. And so even if it's 50.1 pounds, they're going to charge you $25. If you keep repeating that offense, it'll go to $50 and then $75 a box. So don't do it. Stay at 45.
Right.
And you won't be able to send inbound shipping until you kiss Jeff Bezos' ring and say, I'm sorry, and I won't do it again. All right. So January, 3 weeks in, you've got $1,700 in sales, which means you're probably going to finish the month around $2,200 to $2,400 in top line. So you'll do as much in 1 month as you did in the prior 2.5 months. What I like about this, your average selling price is already going up. It's at $15 instead of $12 like it was last year. What that means is you're squeezing more money per book sold, and that shows because your bank deposits now are positive. So you're turning $1,700 into $300 back in your bank account. And it's probably better than this. Amazon only pays every 2 weeks. So depending on when your last payment was, they probably still owe you some more money.
Yep.
All right, so let's look. So this is starting to look a little more rosy. Let's look at the income statement, and we have about 15 minutes. So we'll kind of move through this quickly. So this is all of last year, and then we'll show the full picture. So all of last year, you sold $900 FBA, 51 units. So your average FBA price is really, really good, actually. It's $1,780. Your merchant fulfilled sales were $1,800, and you sold 172, an average sale price of $1,060, which the fees are lower on merchant fulfilled, so it's not bad. What I like about this is your sell-through rate will be higher on merchant fulfilled because buy box doesn't really come into play. So if you're just starting, that controls your sell-through a little bit better. You can compete with the big fellas a little easier, and you don't incur the shipping costs until the book sells. So you don't have to dig a giant hole and ship all these books in. So 50 books sold. I don't know what you listed last year, but every box you send in is going to set you back about $10 to $12.
Yep.
Regardless of what you paid for the inventory. So interesting here, this is just on your FBA business, but what's interesting, the green line, so 12% of Randy's sales have come back to him in the form of Amazon payout or profit, essentially. So the FBA margin on everything he sold FBA is 12%. That's not really high. Now, if you run a restaurant, 8 to 12% is pretty standard in terms of margin in the business. In an inventory business like we're doing, especially with books, I would expect to see that number somewhere in the 30 to 40, maybe 50% range. And that's directly correlated. One, the longer you're in this, you've got some startup costs. Like you bought that label printer, you bought the tracking spreadsheet, you've got some bigger costs that other people may not have right away. But when you're selling $10,000 a month instead of $2,000, that $200 label printer isn't setting you off as much.
Right.
So as a percentage, this number, you should really watch this, and ASP, your average selling price, will really dictate that. So as of the end of last year, so the first 2.5 months, you sold the $2,800. Your gross income was $2,500. This includes all your shipping fees and everything else. So this backs out some refunds and whatnot, but $2,500 top line on Amazon. Cost of goods is almost nothing. Either you didn't factor in everything, or it looks like you were doing like 10 cents a book. So
yeah,
that's okay. Like your inventory is basically free. And then your selling fees, here's what Amazon's taking. Here's your FBA fees. Here's your merchant fulfilled labels. That really starts to eat into your profits as well. Inventory fees, your storage fees were only $9 for all of those FBA items. You're paying Amazon $40 a month, so 3 months worth is $120. You've got all these supplies. Again, $200 in a label printer, 170 for the spreadsheet. So you did some things that maybe you didn't have to do early, but I like that you invested.
Yeah.
And then mileage is really a non-cash expense. So we can almost take that out. So for taxes, net income, you have negative $800, which means you don't have to pay tax yet. That's the number one way, by the way, to if you want to pay less tax or avoid tax, just don't make any money, right? It's simple as that. But it's hard to pay the bills with not any money.
Yeah.
So if we took the $600 away, your net income is actually closer to about negative 200. So you almost broke even from a cash flow standpoint last year, right? Which I guess is not bad in the grand scheme of things. Let's add January into this mix. So we'll go through January, the end of the month. Your total sales now, $4,500, 42 after you factor in returns. And your net profit now is all of a sudden really close to break even. And if we took your mileage out of the equation, so net income is what you pay tax on. Cash flow is what goes into your bank. You actually have a positive cash flow because this was a non-cash expense. So your cash flow at this point, Randy, if you factored in everything, is actually positive $400, which means you have $400 to go spend on inventory. But from the government's perspective, you have a negative profit. So you owe nothing in tax, which is great. You got $400 tax-free. Now, working all of that effort, I don't know how many hours you've put into this, to make $400 is definitely not worth it. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at it, just the time, the cost of my time, it's definitely not worth it.
Yep. All right. So this is a realistic picture. I would say you've got about $400 in your pocket, which you can now, and you've got a label printer, you've got some assets to show for it. And you now have that money to reinvest into the business and keep steamrolling this. So what do you set goals? Do you have a goal where you want to be by, let's call it June 30th?
I haven't set any financial goals. The goals that I think about probably, I think about them all the time, but I definitely, like, every week I try and do some self-check on, again, like you've heard me say throughout, did I do those things that are going to grow the business, focus and grow the business? So no is the short answer to your question, but I want to buy smarter, more profitable books. There's some schools of thought on that, but yeah, just continue the onward and upward trajectory.
Yeah. So I'll set some goals for you, and then we'll have you back on at the end of June. How's that?
I love it. Yeah.
All right, we have 7 minutes, so we do need to wind this down. I want to be respectful of your time, Randy. But I want to give you a chance. So I want to give you just a couple ideas on where I think you can take the business and maybe some of the pointers based on this data. So I think you've already identified, like, you were just getting started. So you listed some books that probably aren't going to sell. You listed a lot of inexpensive books where Amazon took most of that sale price away in the form of fees. Yep. And so you're slowly learning the ropes. Once you get the buy box, so as you sell another 300 to 400 books, you're probably going to get that magic number of 5 feedback. That's going to help. And then I think your FBA sales are actually going to start to take off from there. So I think you're going to come in at January at about $2,200. If you didn't really have growth, $2,000 a month times 6 months, I think you should be, with no growth, I think you should be at about $12,000 of top line sales by the end of June. So we're going to have you back on at the end of June. And if you don't have any growth and you just kind of keep status quo, 10 to 12 grand is very reasonable. I think you should be in the 25 to 30 grand range year to date. So let's set an aggressive goal. Let's try and get you to 25. That means you need to double where you're at now.
Okay.
So you probably need to have about a $6,000 or $7,000 month in June to kind of hit that goal. So let's just see where that ramps up. I know January is high, but you're also smarter. I also want you to focus on a little higher average selling price on your books. So I know that you've just signed up for Scout IQ. Thanks for your business. Yep. Raise that target profit just a little bit. So don't sell books that you're going to net 50 cents, 75 cents. Raise that up. Your average selling price FBA is $17 or $18. So that's actually pretty healthy. And I want to see that stay there or even a little higher, maybe push that up closer to 20. So that's the only thing I would recommend is just buy a little smarter. You'll work less. It's not about number of books listed. That's the wrong goal. It's about profit that you can squeeze out of it. So if you sell more expensive books, even if it's fewer books, it's side hustle anyway. Put your kids to work listing. You've got your day job to worry about. So spend less time in the books, but be more efficient. So the 80-20 rule there. So higher price books, be cautious about what you're listing. And I want to see 25 grand in sales when we talk again in June. How's that?
I love it. Yeah, I love those goals. Love the aggressive goals too.
Okay. What questions do you have? We got about 5 minutes. I'll go as long as you want. When you have to cut off, we'll end this. But what questions do you have for me or just in general about the business?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that we're like kind of like we've been talking. You know, there's a 3 to 6 month time frame where that I'm right smack in the middle of that. You know, should I keep going? Do I continue? It's great to have goals and a vision of what we want, but what would you say to me and others who may want to you know, have the thoughts of like, well, I put in this much, you know, it's a lot of time, I've invested some money. What are the keys, and what, you know, from you or others that have been successful that you would say to us to help us to stick it out?
Well, as the esteemed philosopher Dory says from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. And I know it's cliche and silly, but you're there. You're in the doldrums of book selling. You've found some books. You've had some early success in terms of sales. You can look at the numbers here and go, man, I'm not making any money. This is stupid. I should just, you know, my dollars per hour right now is probably low single digits, like $2 an hour for your effort. Right. Should you even bother continuing? And I think it's hopeful. And I think seeing these numbers helps. And again, the 100 book challenge, THE100bookchallenge.com. If I was smart, I could figure out how to put it up here. Maybe I can, but anyway, go to the 100 book challenge. You guys can plug in numbers and see how long it's going to take to break even. But Randy, kudos for jumping in. Kudos for just telling your neighbor, hey, I'm going to take these off your hands and I'll figure out what to do with it later. Right. Congrats on taking a risk. Most people wouldn't have done that. And you're in this spot now that you are actually building a business. So don't give up. Just keep swimming. Look at your numbers. Don't just keep swimming blindly and say, well, yeah, it's going to work out. I'll be a millionaire soon. That's not realistic. But keep an eye on your numbers. I'll definitely have you back. I'll put a calendar appointment. We'll have you back at early July, end of June. And I want to see where you're at. But don't give up. You're 3 months in. You're just starting to crack positive cash flow. And I really think that you can continue to pour gas on that fire. And you know what, if you're having trouble finding books in your area, if you just kind of lose the love of it, like you mentioned, like what are people after? Well, it's not necessarily about the money for everybody. Like we're all trying to have, whether it's, you know, more coffee in my cup or a vacation or a full-time job, right? There's some money goals. The fun part of books though, like my favorite part, when I have the biggest smile on my face, well, one, it's talking to people in the space. But two, it's going out there and scanning days. That's so much fun. Like going out, and it's that thrill of the hunt. It's not knowing what you're going to find, and that's the best part of this business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about you've heard me talk about being a hobby and a business, but I love to fish, and part of fishing for me is just the solitude, the getting in the outdoors, you know, and what lies beneath, and what big fish is going to come bite that bait. And it's so funny. I was telling my wife the other day, I'm like, you know, she thinks I've lost my mind because I just get like the jitters, like as I get, it's almost like a gambler in Vegas, for crying out loud. But like, you know, like, I'm going to go source, and, you know, but it's now with a great, you know, scanner and some software to help me make good buying decisions. It's, you know, you go in and it really is, we find different reasons why we do it, but it's almost like fishing. That's blasphemous to fishermen, but I mean, like, if I could go put on waders and go source for books, that would be the ultimate for me.
Well, but maybe you should. That could be your shtick. Fishing, the reward is you're out, hopefully in sunshine. You're out on the water with some friends and maybe a beer and whatnot. And you know, it's relaxing. It's that thrill of the hunt. You don't know if you're going to catch nothing or a giant lunker. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you might have some delicious fish to eat if you're, you know, into keeping them. Yeah. Books, you might have a positive ROI to show. If you're into reading, then you might be able to find some good books to add to your shelf as well. There's other benefits, and at least you're out of the house, stretching your legs, meeting your neighbors at a garage sale. So I agree. You know, I love to read. I'm not, you know, a huge book guy necessarily. I just happen to be a businessman that's in the book space right now. But Randy, thanks for jumping in. I know you have to run here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I will definitely look you up in 6 months. I'll let you jump off here and I'll just finish with a couple closing thoughts, but I appreciate it. Thanks for bearing your soul, for letting us look at your numbers. I know some people are really sensitive about looking at numbers and finances, but thanks for opening your books, so to speak. And we'll have you back on in about 6 months.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Caleb. Bye, everyone. Good luck.
All right. Well, I'm really glad that Randy was there. And I just want to say, if you are starting out, hopefully that's a really good indicator of what is possible in the business and where you're going to be realistically in 3 months. And we will definitely have Randy on in another 5.5 months at the end of June, and we'll see where he's at. So if you have questions about getting started, don't do it alone. Come join our Facebook group, the Book Flipper Community. I'll have a link down below this video as well. There's a giant community of booksellers, and we're always learning from each other. I'm still learning. I'm 6 years in. This is my full-time income. My full-time hobby has turned into my full-time job, and I'm still learning. I pick up tidbits there as well. So come ask questions, learn what Amazon's up to, learn, secrets, tips, how to find better books, how to network, and just how to run an efficient business. There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of people having fun with their hobby that's turned into a business. And so if you are new, if you have questions, comment below. We'll jump in and answer them. Don't give up, keep swimming. And, once you get past that 6 to 9 month point, good things tend to happen. So that's it. I'm going to bounce as well. Hope you all have a great day. And as always, if you have questions, you can find me, Caleb, at thebookflipper.com. You can find our blog at thebookflipper.com and everywhere else. So leave some comments. We love to interact with the community. Take care.